What, baby?
Don't press the X.
You did it. Hey, hi, welcome or welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the BARATIE arc. I'm so sorry about my pronunciation. I am working on it, and so, I do try my best. And anyway, so I'm going to be talking about the BARATIE arc, which runs from chapters 42 to 68 in One Piece. And I'm excited to dig in. Now, if you're new to my channel, then a special hello to you. My name is Shelly. I should probably say my name. My name is Shelly, and I really love books and reading. And right now I am documenting my reading journey in a relative amount of detail as I'm going through Oda's masterpiece, One Piece. So if you are into that, if you also like reading, if you like to listen to somebody enthusiastically talk about her thoughts on books and reading, I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around, and without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. I have a whole playlist of all of my One Piece videos, and you can actually watch them in order if that's what you'd like to do, or if you want to skip around to like a specific arc that I covered, then I will have those linked down below as well, like the specific videos. And so here I am. In the last video, I did like little bursts of thoughts, and it actually worked out better. And since I have a bit more time, because I am on holiday break from teaching right now, that I am just going to give you these little kind of short bursts of thoughts. So right now I'm currently at chapter 46. So I read 42 through 45, and so much is going on already. So the first thing that happens is that we meet Zoro's brothers. What? He has brothers? And it's like, I don't know. They're looking very 80s to me, y'all. Like, I know that this series, I think, started in the late 80s, maybe 90s. But we are introduced to Johnny and Yosaku, I believe, and they're the bounty hunting team, and especially Johnny is looking just super inspired by the Terminator. That's who I think of. It's they look pretty great, and I think we're getting the same thing as we got from the little treasure chest man, Gaimon. This little interlude, this chapter, this like transition chapter that introduces us to like the next arc in earnest. And in this transition chapter, I feel like we're maybe getting like the whiff of a theme. And the theme is this, and I don't know for sure because I'm not done reading it, obviously. The theme, I think, for this arc is world building. And I know that like this could, like all of you were like, you have not even seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of world building. However, I feel like, someone said at the beginning of One Piece, one of y'all had said that at the beginning it feels very much like Island of the Week. And I was like, yes, like Monster of the Week, like where are we at today? What village are we at? What are we learning? And so we're at the BARATIE, which is this floating restaurant on the sea. And right before we actually are introduced to the BARATIE, the floating restaurant on the sea, I don't know why I keep doing that, there's this little interlude chapter, kind of like when we met Gaimon on the island, and it's just like its own little segment talking about him and treasure. We're in this interlude chapter, we're meeting Zoro's brothers, like who knew he even had brothers, and that they're bounty hunters, and in some ways it's growing the world. It's like making Zoro even more complex, if that's even possible, than I would have thought, and that he has kin that are also on the sea, and they have like this run-in, and in some ways I felt like it just like the interlude expanded the world, and he's like, wait, you have no idea what's in store, at least in the next few chapters. And I'm probably going to be laughing at myself in a few hundred chapters, being like, girl, you had no idea that the world was going to get this big. So we meet the brothers. Oh, and then we continue with the SBSs, and I really enjoy the SBSs. And it's like someone was like, "Why do you write ta-da in the back?" Like Oda uses ta-da a lot. Or what did you guys all say? Oda-san? Did you or some of you call him Goda, like goat Oda, like the goat Oda? But anyways, that he uses like ta-da quite a bit in the backgrounds of his paneling. And he was like, because ta-da, you get the feel, like I draw the feeling of ta-da. Whereas if I put babing, then I would be drawing the paneling that would feel like babing. And I was like, I like that. That makes total sense to me. If I'm going to say woo, like, because I'm like a sound effects person, and so I'll be like, when it's like cha-cha-cha, and like I'm like, that has a different feeling than cho-cho-cho, of course. And so I just like that there is a levity, a humor, a lightheartedness to Oda's SBSs and the way that he interacts with his fans. There's just something really sweet and special about it. Following Buggy's story through the covers of the chapters is the best. The best. So the last, in one of them, he is getting spit out by a giant goose who said that pirates don't taste good, or like a giant duck. I think it's a goose. I don't know. So he's, the goose is having like a fork and knife in his hand, and all of a sudden you see little Buggy flying in the air, and it's very apparent the goose spit him out because he didn't think that pirates were to his actual literal taste. And Buggy gets spit out to an island, and what do you know? It's Gaimon's island, little treasure chest, man. And I'm like, ah! He's like, Oda is tying it all together, and I was like, Buggy is on his own adventure as he is limbless and torsoless, and he is going from animals trying to eat him to now being attacked on an island. And I was just so delighted by that. Another thing that I was really delighted by and like curious about is the BARATIE, the ocean-going restaurant. It's a giant fish, and I love the way that it is designed. Again, Oda's designs are really impressive, and I'm not surprised that this fish on the ocean restaurant that has 3 decks to it has like made my heart flutter a little bit, because in terms of like structural world building or like creative houses, and I'm not alone in loving this, but I really love Howl's Moving Castle, the Murakami movie. I love that castle so much. I just think it's phenomenal. And so it was kind of neat because I felt like the creativity that was put into this like floating fish restaurant on the seas. It reminded me of Howl's Moving Castle and like the creativity that is in that structure. The silliness continues when Luffy is trying to design a pirate flag, and they go through a couple of iterations before it becomes the flag that everyone recognizes. But it's such a funny and silly process, and I'm just so glad that Oda always puts in like moments of humor and brightness, amid the fight scenes, and I just find that really delightful. We also get to meet Lieutenant Iron Fist Fullbody, Minister of the Navy, and he doesn't have too big of a role, but I really thought that the fist, like the design and sort of the close-upness of his actual Iron Fist is pretty cool and like a really interesting detail. Perhaps thus far the most interesting character, though not my favorite design character, but the most interesting character that we're meeting in this so far, is Sanji, which is the assistant chef. And he's taking orders, and he has been working on the BARATIE for a very long time. But what I like about his design is this curl in his eyebrow, which I didn't notice until, so we get an introduction him, like of Sanji. And then, you know, it wasn't until a few panels later that I realized that he has this, you know, really, he has his hair covering one eye, and then this swoop detail for his eyebrow, and then, you know, and that is consistent. I just really like that, the little curl detail for his eyebrow. And at this point, Luffy is trying to get Sanji to join his crew, Luffy's crew, to be the cook. And as we've seen before, it's sort of a bit of a pattern. You know, Sanji's like, no, no, thank you. But so far, cook, chef, I think Luffy says cook. But anyways, but the chef of the ship. So what happens is that the Luffy's ship gets shot at by a cannon, and he uses his gum powers to like have the cannon bounce off of him, and the cannon bounces off of Luffy onto the baratie, and it creates some damage. And so now Luffy's in this precarious situation because they don't have any berries or money to pay off the captain of the baratie, or the chef, who seems like acting captain because it's a restaurant. And anyways, and so now he has to like figure out a way to pay off the damage that he did to the baratie. And so the person he has to answer to is Chef Zeph, which I really loved. the rhyme of that. And he is my favorite design character thus far. He's got this like super tall chef's hat and this braided mustache, which is just amazing. He's got a peg leg and a striped shirt and a fierceness to his being, and he's like a rather large, like a stoutly fellow, and I just really loved it. I saw his character design and I gasped. I mean, that's how excited I was to see his character. So the reason why I had said that I feel like this arc so far is all about world building is because we're getting a sense of how pirates act among each other, and the very perilous nature of piracy and being on the seas. And I'm not surprised that it does have this like out of bounds kind of feel, like we make up our own rules, or this very much like no rules apply type of feeling. And it could also be because of this. Specifically for me, it's giving me like an Out West kind of feeling because I'm reading Doc by Mary Doria Russell right now. And in this book, you know, this is about Doc Holliday, and we're set in a time in which things are just getting established and rules are just being established in the US. And so it does have that feeling that almost like anything goes. The law has some slipperiness to it. And right now in One Piece, in the Baratie arc so far, it feels very much the same. Like, people are fighting, people are getting beat up, we're not going to feed you unless you can pay. And, you know, it's like this sense of ruthlessness out there. And I really liked that. And then there have been these like ominous, hints towards Krieg's crew. So I am wondering who this Krieg person is. Oda's doing that thing where he's introducing you to a character, introducing me, at least as the reader, to a character without showing his face. And Krieg has quite the backstory. It's like he is the captain, the leader of like 5,000 pirates, and if you make enemies of any of Krieg's crew, then, you know, you're risking your life that maybe 5,000 pirates are going to come after you. And so I was just like, who is this Krieg person? We haven't met him yet. And there's, you know, it's really building him up, at least in my mind. And then Luffy, you know, he can't pay for the damage that he did to the Baratie, and so he gets another half page like reintroducing himself, and I loved it. And it's Luffy, and he's got his arms crossed, and he's got this huge old smile, and it's on hiatus from piracy, free labor, chore boy, Monkey D. Luffy, and I just love that. And then of course, as he's just clumsy all around, which is wonderful and hilarious, breaking dishes and doesn't know how to do a darn thing and is quite helpless even as like chore boy. My camera decided to die, so yay for me, right mid-sentence. So I think I was saying that Luffy's not very good at being a chore boy. He's causing more harm than good, which is hilarious and wonderful and delightful and charming in its own way. And I love that, his friends decide to eat in the restaurant and they're kind of poking fun at him for being chore boy. And, it's all just so exciting. And I'm curious as to who Sanji is and what he'll add to this arc at least, and the future of him, like going forward. I don't know. But I'm just still so enamored with, the character design and this, this sense of this world, which is just kind of bananas. But anyhow, I'll be back with more thoughts. I've read up to chapter 53, and I have some evolving ideas about the theme of this particular arc. I have said, I believe I said it yesterday, I haven't gone back to look at that footage, that this whole thing is about the, like, growing the world, and understanding the world of One Piece and the sort of perilous and rough and tumble nature of being a pirate. But I also think that Oda is digging deep, and he's also showing us readers, like, some of the real ramifications of being on sea, like being on the sea or being at sea, one of those two. And it's because in that interlude chapter, when we meet Zoro's brothers, they're sick and dying, and Nami's like, you guys, it's scurvy. Like, it's scurvy. Like, you're not getting enough nutrients in your body because it's really hard to keep fruits, like fresh fruits and vegetables, on deck. And then, we have this moment where Luffy is like, well, we need a cook then. And, now this whole arc is all about finding a cook. But then the theme comes up again, or this concept of like underfed, depleted pirates. It's almost like it doesn't matter how strong you are, you still need the basics. And one of those basics is fresh food and water. And so, I was thinking about that because here we are. We have, let me see, we have Don Krieg. Oh, and also someone, before I get into Don Krieg, someone has very kindly given me a pronunciation guide for this arc. And they said that it's the baratie, the baratie. So I'm sorry, I'm growing even among these little clips. I'm growing, y'all. But the baratie. So, anyways, let's go back to Krieg. So we finally see him, and he is enormous. Like, and he is looking real, like, real bougie. I don't know. He's got this coat on that is really, he's looking like a Viking, I think, actually. He's got this coat on, but like with a nod to modern life because of the the shirt that he's wearing, which is like a cheetah or a leopard print shirt. It is an animal print shirt, and he's got this coat that has like a fur collar. Actually, that kind of reminds me of Buggy with his fur collared cape, but this is a fur collared coat with some details to it, and this animal print shirt, and then this like thick chained necklace, and he's got a, not a bandana, I don't know if they're called bandanas, if it's just a strip of, maybe it's a bandana but tied in a strip across his forehead. And yeah, and next to it's, what did they say, it's not Jin, it's Gin, next to Gin, is that right? He just looks monstrous. Next to his compatriot, he looks enormous. Like, he just looks huge. And so, he comes in, and what does he need? He needs fresh food and water. Like, he needs to be fed in order to break his promises, because he initially says that he's not going to hurt anybody if he just gets some food in him, and then he just changes it after 1 second after getting food in him, and he's like, no, we will take over the BARATIE. And I was like, oh, look at you, all snazzy and stuff. There are tricks flying here, there, and everywhere. First, Don Krieg tricks, those feeding him by saying that he's not going to take over or he's not going to harm anybody, and then he's like, no, mahaha, I was just kidding. And then he decides to take over stuff. But then we also find out that Nami decides that she wants to steal the ship, and she was like, mahaha, Luffy, I was just gonna partner with you for a little bit, but now I'm just gonna leave you stranded on the BARATIE, and that's it, like, see you later, bye. And I was like, what? I really thought Nami was part of the crew, and that little trickster, that was dirty. That was dirty. I trusted her. Meanwhile, the chapters are still giving, like the chapter art, they're still giving because they're following Buggy, and he is now made friends with Gaimon, the treasure chest man. And so initially they were fighting, and then all of a sudden we see that they've made peace, and they're just having a good old time on Gaimon's treasure island. And I really love that. Every time we get to a new chapter and Buggy shows up, I'm like, yes. We see some themes continue to develop. So Krieg, well, I mean, he's just full of surprises. He's wearing this metal armor underneath that animal print shirt, and it's like also somehow has weaponry built in, which is pretty cool. And then he finds Chef Zeph. He realizes that Chef Zeph has gone to the Grand Line and has returned unscathed, and he is like, well, I want your logbook. Don Krieg wants Chef Zeph's logbook. And again, we get this idea that treasure is something different to everyone, because Chef Zeph's logbook of his experiences at Grand Line means too much to him to just hand over to this brute, and he's willing to fight for his treasure, which is, again, this logbook. The twists and turns, they just keep coming, because we find out that Krieg's 50 ships were destroyed. They were beat by a single man. And yet again, we get this awesome trick of, hearing the rumors. We're hearing the rumblings of a new person before we actually meet them on the page. And so this person is clearly, has some sort of strength or a superpower or something, because he has destroyed just a bunch of pirates and their ships. And it's like, how is that even possible? And so we come to find out that I'm still mad about Nami. I'm looking through my screenshots, and I'm like, Nami, why did you steal that ship, girl? What you doing over there? Because I like her, and I want her to stay. Okay, so then we find out, yeah, the guy with the hawk eyes, that's what they were calling him. Like, he has these hawk eyes, and he has this power to destroy even the most fiercest pirates on the Grand Line. And so we find out that he has the title of the greatest swordsman in the world. So Zoro has some competition here, and his outfit is very like, his outfit looks like someone that Zoro would fight. Some sort of swordsman that has, I don't know what kind of hat this is, but he's got a feather in his cap, and it's a black cap, and he's wearing a cross necklace, and it looks like at first it looks like the sleeves of a tattoo, but they are not. It is just an amazing shirt that he is wearing, and this long cape, and these big boots, and of course, and a pencil mustache that makes him look even more evil than he probably actually is. And so, so then of course if this guy, Hawkeye, is that right? Hawkeye my hawk. I feel like that. Why am I saying it over and over? It sounds Shakespearean. Hawkeye my hawk. But he he's obviously going to pose a threat to Zoro's greatest ambition, because Zoro's greatest ambition is to be the greatest swordsman in the world. And here he actually meets the greatest swordsman in the world. So of course they have to battle. And what I loved was that Zoro, as you know, they're about to go down, but then Hawkeye, my Hawk, he has this like little sword, and Zoro has his 3 swords, and Hawkeye is clearly a better swordsman than Zoro is, and that really bugged me because of course I'm rooting for Zoro and not Hawkeye, my Hawk. So, and then as he is being defeated, Zoro says that he would rather die than be defeated, and again, it speaks to like his internal efficacy as wanting to be the greatest pirate in the world. And I don't know why I'm talking so fast, but it really speaks to like his internal sensibilities of what he wants, and that again, defeat is like the worst thing according to his own sensibilities, that death would be even better than defeat. Zoro is so honorable, y'all. Like, he stands there. This is what he said: wounds on the back are a swordsman's shame. And then we see Hawkeye, my Hawk, take his sword and slash Zoro, and I just about lost my darn mind. I was like, no, because I have apparently become very attached to Zoro. And then that is where the chapter ended. And I was like, if I was reading this week to week, I would be chewing my nails over the fact that Zoro just got slashed through the chest, and I do not want anything to happen to my precious Zoro because he is precious. And then we find out that he is really just thrown into the sea, but you know, Hawkeye decides not to actually kill Zoro, and I was like, thank goodness, because no. Also, in the chapter interludes with chapter cover story, side story about Buggy, he pairs up with a woman. And I don't know who this woman is, but they seem to be really getting along. And I'm like, okay, I want to know who you are. And I want to know what you're all about, because I'm sure you're all about something. Because everyone has depth. Everyone has depth in One Piece. So I'm learning. So these are my thoughts up until, chapter 53. And I'm sure more to come. So much has happened, y'all. Okay, so I am at chapter 61. So much has happened, including the BARATIE has transformed. The head of the fish ship comes off, and then it like grows wings, and it becomes like a battle deck, which is just like bananas and delightful in all of the greatest ways. And I really love the transformation. I am very curious as to what Oda, or do you guys call him Goda? Oda is gonna do in the future. A lot of people are Goda, but I would almost want to say Goda, but that doesn't sound right. Is it Goda? Like Oda is God? Or is it Goda, like Oda is the goat? I guess both are pretty great. So I don't know. I digress. But watching the BARATIE transform was really, really cool. And then we meet somebody who is just like wildly off the rails in terms of character. Like what I like to say, cuckoo's bananas crazy, off the rails wacky. And it is the second unit commander, Invincible Pearl. And he is just, my goodness, he's got these shields that are on his elbows and on his hands. And I mean, he's got this, he's massive. He takes up a wide girth of the screen, I guess. I don't know. He's just, and most of his body is this shield. And what's interesting is that he is very much clinging on to the fact that he has never been harmed in battle. And then when Luffy actually comes out of nowhere and harms him, I mean, things were getting like very perilous between him and Sanji, I think. And then here Luffy comes and he's like, "Pacha," doing his gum thing. and Pearl, Invincible Pearl, he gets a bloody nose, and then it like dredges up childhood trauma. Didn't think that it would go there. And as it's dredging up childhood trauma, like he bursts into flames. So many twists and turns, truly. But it was also interesting because it touched on a theme that we've talked about before, in that what is precious to one person is not necessarily precious to another. And Invincible Pearl was very prideful and very proud of the fact that he had never been harmed in battle, and then here he is getting harmed, and he like literally cannot handle himself. Like the man burst into flames. It was kind of nuts. Oh yeah, one of the notes that I had was Invincible Pearl saying, "I've never lost a single drop of blood in battle, not one drop." And so it just like, it shows that pride. And then the thing that's still getting me every time is the cover stories following Buggy's journey. Oh my gosh, I'm so attached to Buggy. We are gonna, at the end of the segment, we're gonna get to like the outrage, y'all, the outrage that I am feeling about Buggy. But you know, we're following him along, and now the guy on the unicycle, I forget his name, and the guy with the lion head are battling it out. So they're trying to figure out who's going to be the new captain, and that's the new cover story. It's like, who's going to be the new captain? And plot twist, it's neither of them. It's the lion who's the new captain. And it's just like, again, it's so bizarre. I just love it so much. And then Sanji is saying, it sort of was like, I did not expect this, but all of a sudden we are back in time. We get a Sanji backstory. And my goodness, I mean, talk about deep. So he was like, don't kill the captain, because all of a sudden Gin comes out and he's like he's got his firearms to the captain's, to Chef Zeph's head. And you know, he's about to kill Chef Zeph, and all of a sudden Sanji's like, you know, please don't, you know, he's like, do not kill Chef Zeph. He means the world to me. And let me tell you why. And then we get this backstory about when he was a kid. He had this idea, Sanji did, as a child, to go to, what is it? It was like the ocean with all of the fish, all the different kinds of fish. And, you know, he's working at a restaurant, but he's also a pirate. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, Chef Zeph comes to the scene, but he's a pirate and he has both of his legs. Very important detail for the story. And through a storm, they both get washed overboard. Like, everything breaks apart. I mean, things were perilous to begin with. I mean, things were perilous between the shipmates and the pirates and all of that. But what Chef Zeph recognized was the sort of wild-hearted dream that Sanji had that was aligned with Chef Zeph's dream of finding, like, the most variety of fish, not ship, in the ocean, and just, you know, how wonderful that would be. And so they get washed ashore. Chef Zeph saves Sanji, and they get washed ashore on this rock. And he gives Sanji some food and says if we can stretch it, it'll last longer than the 5 days that it's allotted. And then we see Chef Zeph like cut off his leg, and then I'm like, is this the move of a not necessarily sane man? That's what I was thinking as I was reading. I was like, what is happening? Why did you just cut off your own leg? And so the days stretch. Like, it is Sanji and Chef Zeph on this rock. No, like, they see a ship in the distance, and the ship ignores them or doesn't see them. And they are living, like, separate lives on this rock. And Sanji is, like, forced to eat moldy bread as his last meal. I mean, there's nothing left. He's really brought low. And at that point, you know, he wants to go and kind of check on Chef Zeph. Actually, he wants to see if Chef Zeph has more food so that, you know, maybe Sanji can survive a little bit longer. And he found out that the bag that Sanji had assumed would be his food is now full. I mean, he realizes, or he discovers, that it's full of treasure, like actual physical gold and treasure coins, not food in the least, even though at this moment the greatest treasure would have been food, which is kind of interesting as well. And Chef Zeph cut off his own leg to eat it in order to survive, and he ended up giving all of the food to Sanji so that Sanji could survive. And so for that very I mean, wow, like wild backstory and really like heartfelt in a lot of ways. It was just, it was not what I had expected, which seems to be a theme throughout this story, that through through these actions of incredible mercy, incredible grace on Chef Zeph's part, to have given up something so precious as food to a little boy because he sees something in the little boy, recognizes something special in that little boy that he once had as a person, as a pirate, and that, you know, their dreams are aligned. And, you know, it's just about like the way that someone touches you in a way that you didn't expect and what you're willing to, you know, give up, I think, in order to keep that innocence and maybe that dream intact. And so Sanji has been in his debt, in Chef Zeph's debt for years, and has been working, and at that time on the rock, you know, he was like, you know what would be great on the seas is a floating restaurant, and so that we could feed pirates. And food means something different. I mean, Oda in a lot of ways recontextualizes what it means to be fed on the seas. I mean, we see it over and over again. We see it with Krieg, Don Krieg's starving pirates on his crew. We see it with himself. We see it with Gin. We see it with Zoro's brothers and Nami feeding them and making sure that their scurvy clears up. And just this importance of feeding someone else and what that can mean for their lives and for their survival. So that was really interesting. But I think the most, I don't know if it's the most complex part, but Sanji is willing to destroy the BARATIE in order for nobody to have like a prize, like for Don Krieg's crew not to have a prize or any winnings. Like he's willing to destroy their home, the restaurant, the thing that they've worked on and built. And he's willing to just let that go to waste in order to, and he's willing to die too, in order for Don Krieg not to win or not to have anything to show for winning. And so this is what like, Luffy's like had it. He's like done. He's like, my goodness, you're just taking this to the wrong extreme. And he said, getting killed is no way to repay your debt. He didn't save your life so you could throw it away. Only a coward would do that. And, you know, I think in some ways he's just recontextualizing like what it means to have lived through something so perilous with another person, and what it means to actually repay a debt, and what it doesn't mean. And Luffy is absolutely right. Absolutely right. It doesn't mean that you should one should die or destroy something that they've built just so that nobody else could have it. And I just thought Luffy was just like, I'm like, oh my goodness, you are spot on, sir, right at this moment. And then like the battle continues. And honestly, the interesting twist that I got to was that Gin, he ends up not killing Chef Zeph, and he recognizes that in his weakest moment, in Gin's weakest moment of needing food and needing to be replenished in order to just survive, you know, that Chef Zeph was there, and the BARATIE was there in order to save him. And he's only here because of that kindness and the kindness that Sanji had fed him. And so in some ways he repays that by not killing Chef Zeph. And essentially like, you know, I guess in some ways betraying Don Krieg. So, I mean, so complicated, but so good, like so good. I was like, what? Oh my goodness. And I'm genuinely nervous in some ways for Luffy, because I know that the devil fruit makes him weak in water and that he could sink. And the fights are getting dangerously close to water. Something else that I noticed was how everybody seems to underestimate Luffy. He looks like this young man, this boy in a straw hat, and he wears flip-flops, and everybody's always surprised when he busts out with his gum powers, you know? And so it is surprising, but it's like Luffy really believes in himself, and it doesn't really matter that so many people underestimate him, because Don Krieg is like, who's going to be the king of the pirates or something of that nature, like taunting Luffy. And Luffy's like, I am. He was like, you don't. Luffy tells Don Krieg that he doesn't have what it takes to be, the king of the pirates. And Don Krieg busts out, and he's all about winning. He's all about like sort of lording his power over others. And I don't know, but it's so interesting because he's like, he even lies about it. Don Krieg does. He says that, he's gonna shoot Luffy with this poisonous gas, and that the moment the gases touch Luffy, he'll be demolished or annihilated or liquefied or something like that. And Luffy's still willing to fight. And then what comes to find out is that Don Krieg lied, and the bomb that he shoots off ends up having, I think, like ninja stars, if that's what they're called, come out of it. And it ends up wounding Luffy. And then Don Krieg like laughs about it, saying like, I wouldn't use my most powerful weapon that could take out entire villages on this little boy. And it still is showing like how much he underestimates Luffy. And so I wonder if one of the themes that we're going to see, or something that's going to develop and grow, is just when you have your heart in the right place for something and you want it so badly, like nothing is going to stop you to get to the thing that you really want. And it really doesn't matter what anyone else says, because you can hold, like you yourself, Luffy himself, can hold this thing of wanting to be king of the pirates. He holds it so dear that it doesn't really matter what anyone else says or how they taunt him, because he knows that like his heart is in the right place, and that for that reason no one can get in the way of his dreams. So I don't know, the whole thing is just, it's so good, and I'm so excited to finish this arc, not because I want to finish it, but because I'm really enjoying it. And wow, I mean, just whoo, the whole thing. Talk about an intense moment. Chef Steph cutting off his own leg was just whoo. It was something else. It really was. I was not, and then the reason why, I was like, he cut off his leg, and then you don't find out for a couple chapters what happened to that leg, and then you're like, whoa, savage. I respect it though, but wow. Hey you all, so I have finished this arc, and wow. And I also left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I was like outraged, and then I didn't tell you what I was outraged about, and it is the results of the first One Piece character popularity poll, and it says that there were 3,600 submissions to this popularity poll. So to no surprise, Luffy is the number one. He obtained a little over 8,000 votes. And then Zoro, who had like 7,200 votes. And then third is red-haired Shanks, which I was like, wait, what? I didn't think Shanks, like, he's barely shown up. I mean, he has shown up, but he's barely shown up. Like, he showed up in Buggy's backstory, and he showed up at the very beginning. So I'm like, okay. I just wasn't expecting that. And he had 5,800 votes about, and then Sanji. So, I was like, okay. But I think I was outraged because it goes Sanji, Nami, Ben Beckman, like, what? And then Buggy. Like, I think Buggy would be my number 3. I just really liked him. I liked his gum power. No, I liked his devil fruit power. And I love the side story that's going on at the beginning of the chapters. Like, I look forward to that so much. So I was a little bit outraged. And then Usopp is number 8. Number 9 is Kuro. Number 10 is Quiana? Not sure. But I was like, how dare Buggy get number 7 in this ranking? What? So I'm wondering if there's another popularity poll. There's another popularity poll that pops up in these 1,000 chapters that I have to read, because I really truly have like 1,000 chapters left. I'm only at I finished chapter 68. That maybe Buggy will be higher, but then there will be more characters to rank. I don't know. I don't know. So let's think. What happened? There is obviously this massive battle between both Sanji and Luffy against Captain Krieg. Oh, I've got an itch. Well, actually it is 2 against 2, because it's Don Krieg and Gin, like Geezer Gin, somebody was like, it's like the G in geezer and then I-N. And I was like, okay, not Jen, Gin. Okay, so it's Gin and Don Krieg. And I was like so surprised that Gin had such a reputation. And in one of the panels, it says, that's Gin. He'll torture a man to death, heedless of his screams. The devil man hasn't an ounce of mercy. And so we're getting, the fact that, he's merciless. But then I was like, wait a second, who was the one that decided to show some mercy because he understood that those cooking on the BARATIE had fed Don Krieg's crew and Gin himself. And so Gin is like winning. He's mostly fighting Sanji, and he's definitely winning. And it sort of comes down to like, he has this moment where he can really just annihilate Sanji. And in that moment, he's like, I can't do it, which was so satisfying, by the way. And he's like, I can't kill this man. And he was like, why not? And Gin said that it was because Sanji showed him kindness. Like, it was a moment of kindness that was shown to him in a time in which he didn't deserve it. And it was like it was in recent memory, or in his memory, it was like the kindest thing someone had done for him. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, that was just such a great twist. Like, anyways, I'm a sucker for that kind of thing anyways. Like, I love when, it's like good versus evil, but it's more nuanced than that. But it's about, being merciless versus showing mercy. And because there was this moment of kindness, Gin is like passing it forward or passing it on. He's using that to work in his heart, to make decisions. And in that moment, he's like, I can't kill Sanji because Sanji was kind to me. And I just thought that was just what a powerful thing. Like, what a great message. What a powerful thing. And also, I can be very particular about when a message is being like hit over the head. Like, it's like, this is my message to its readers. Almost as if treating one's readers as if we are unintelligent or that I'm unintelligent. And so I like it when something is surprising, nuanced, and has a moment of just being a little like, it's a little more eased in. It's a little more complex than just like hitting one's readers over the head with the message. And I just thought this was just beautifully nuanced. And so it's like you have this moment and Gin can't do it. He can't kill Sanji. And I was just like, yes. So, and then of course Don Krieg is like, you've betrayed me, and he's, all puffed up and now even more determined to win. I mean, he's making fun of Luffy, which is really like frustrating. And then what do you know? Luffy comes out and he has grit. And this whole time I was chewing my nails. I was sitting at the edge of my seat because I was like, the ship is falling apart. The BARATIE is not, it's not holding up all that well. At least the battle deck wasn't. And I was worried that, Luffy would be in the water, that the ocean would take his powers, his devil fruit powers away, and that he would drown. And so it felt like the stakes were even higher because Luffy's life was in danger. And Don Krieg, boy, he has all the weapons. Like, he reminded me of like a Batman villain or a bunch of Batman villains. Like, he finally does do the poisonous gas. And again, you have this moment of nuance, this moment of mercy, this moment of kindness, because Luffy grabs the gas masks from Don Krieg's crew who are sitting in the ocean watching the battles go on. He grabs the masks from them and he's like, I'm going to take these or borrow these. And he throws them to Gin and Sanji. And all of a sudden, the gas goes off and he has a mask. Like, Luffy finds a mask and he puts it on. And it's like, where did the mask come from? And what do you know? It was Gin who gave Luffy the mask. And I was just like, what? So here's a man. And I wonder if we're going to get an even like, if we're going to get more in-depth backstory about Gin because here we have a man whose reputation is that he is merciless and that he is heartless and that he will kill his enemies and second in command for Don Krieg for good reason. And what do you know? Like, it's just a moment of kindness wins over all. Like, he decides to spare Sanji's life and then also spare Luffy's life by giving up his own gas mask, or poison mask, or breathing mask, and he throws it to Luffy, and so now Luffy's okay to fight. And then poor Gin, I'll get there. Poor Gin, because he breathed in some poison, and they're trying to figure out how to save his life, but the food is poisoned, and they don't really know what to do. And so they were like, just put a mask on him and have him breathe deeply, and hopefully he'll be spared from this catastrophe that Don Krieg like bestowed upon everybody on the BARATIE. And then we really boil down to, which is a formula, at least for, or a pattern that I'm noticing right now with One Piece and with these arcs, is like somebody new is being introduced, and I'm sure the pattern will break, or maybe it doesn't, but it's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable thus far. And so what we get is, we get this new setting. We have this monster, this new bad guy. In this case, it's Don Krieg. And there's a couple of new members, new cast members to follow, like Chef Zeph and like Sanji, and even maybe arguably Gin. And then, the conflict, there's a steady conflict, and it's rising and it gets more intense. And ultimately there's an epic battle, and that epic battle is Luffy against the main bad guy. And so, the epic battle was indeed epic, and there was a lot at stake, and there was a lot of fight in Luffy. And I really loved the comment. There's always really good banter, a little trash talking here and there, which is always a lot of fun. And then ultimately, like, there's commentary from those watching. And so I think it was Chef Zeph and Sanji and a couple of the other ones, like Carne and Patty, which I thought of it. He mentioned that Patty is something, I thought of like a meat patty, and Carne as like carne asada, but then Oda in one of the SBSs said that it wasn't that. It was something food related, but it wasn't like a meat patty and then carne asada. But that's what I thought, like a burger and then a taco. That's just what I thought. But I did enjoy the sort of side chefs and their banter and their relationship with Sanji, who's always like beating them up. And so it's all of them sort of having this dialogue in the background as Don Krieg and Luffy are fighting. What they're talking about is how much grit Luffy has, and like what that means and how important that is in a fight. And that, I think Don Krieg, he's just like, in his banter, he's like, you have a death wish, and don't you ever give up, and all of that. And Luffy just continues to go at it, because of something fiery inside of him. And I really, really loved that. And I loved that they were just like, that kid's got grit. I don't know, there was just something great about that. And of course, like any good story, Luffy wins, and it's awesome. He wins the battle, and they talk about how, so Sanji and Luffy, I think, end up chatting, I believe, and Chef Zeph overhears them. And, Sanji is still holding on to this idea of the all blue. And Luffy is talking about his dream to be the king of the pirates. And then Chef Zeph is like, man, like these kids holding on to their dreams. And, it's like out of all of this, this expansion with the world and this theme of food, which was just wonderful, and kindnesses that we show one another, and how kindness is really at the root of some of the most important decisions in our life, and how kindness can change somebody, which was just really beautiful and really nuanced. And on top of it all, it's like, I don't know, there's this this elevation, or this this idea, this conversation that's sort of bubbling in the background of, keeping what's important in our hearts, like to hold that dear. And it's not, it's a good thing to hold it dear. I was going to say, like, it's not a bad thing to hold like maybe a childish dream to others so closely and so dear. And, it adds so much to these characters. And so Sanji, everybody's like, you make terrible soup at the very end of it all. They're like, you make terrible soup, Sanji. You're a terrible cook. And they're like, no, we were just saying that because we know we want you to be able to chase your dream. Don't just get stuck on this ship. Like, go and live your life and follow your dreams. And yeah, I guess it's like this idea that it's okay to have a guiding principle in your life that you use as a guiding light for certain decisions that you make. And in a lot of ways, it fuels Luffy's fighting. It makes him have some grit and his willingness to not give up and his willingness to continue to pursue and to win. It's like this precious, unfettered thing, untainted thing that he holds so dear is like what fuels his power. And it was just so good. It was so good. And the new edition of Sanji is wonderful. And I think that's it. So I do want to end with kind of two sort of random things. I'm missing our, like, the characters that we've already been introduced to. I'm really missing them, and I'm sure we'll get more of them as I continue reading. I really miss Zoro, and where the heck is Nami? They kind of set up that they're gonna go try and find Nami. But I'm like, I miss them because it's like I was introduced to these characters, Zoro, Nami, even Usopp, and I'm like, they're not getting a lot of airtime. It's like all going to like the new person who I inevitably sort of fall in love with, and I'm excited to get to know. So, I'm missing these other characters and I want more of them. And the other thing was I have been trying to explain, this is very like off the rails, I guess. I've been trying to explain to my husband what One Piece is and how to, I was trying to articulate to him like what it is and why I'm, there's a whole bunch of y'all, and y'all are here excited with my reading, and I'm ever so grateful of that, my reading of One Piece, and you're so excited for me to report back. And there is something in this experience where I am digging into One Piece, and I have this question of why is it so well loved? And I have no doubt that I'm gonna get there, but I do tend to chew that question over. And so I was talking to my husband, and I was basically detailing this arc to him, this current arc that I was reading for this video, the BARATIE. And I was talking about the ship and Chef Zeph, and I was really talking about the backstory of Chef Zeph and Sanji and what they meant to each other, and how it was all about like connecting with somebody over having the same dream. Chef Zeph wanted the all blue, and now Sanji holds dear to him finding the all blue and what that would mean to him. And I was talking about, I was like, it's both like bizarre and magical, and it's sort of doing this thing, me and my very inarticulate self, it's doing this thing that I think fantasy is able to do so well, if it's done well, that it's like the constructor of the world, for in this case Oda or Tolkien or other writers, they are constructing this world that has its own rules, and if one can get their readers to buy in enough and to believe in the world enough, then sometimes what these creators can do is that they can really manipulate the world, and it can start to feel very, I don't know, it's very real, and it's like the things make sense in the world and in the confines of the world, And so, but you know, maybe if somebody else just entered it sort of at chapter 60 or just stepped into the world without any context, it doesn't really mean very much. But because they do such a good job of making this world feel very real and believable, and there's this buy-in of the rules and the parameters of the world, certain things happen and they feels like you as the reader get it, and it feels so much more high stakes, and it feels so much more would be lost, you know, if something happened. And I think a good example for me is like, here I am reading the BARATIE arc, and Luffy is surrounded by water, and I'm like, oh no. And actually, even at one point, you know, there was like an iron net around Luffy, and he's sinking, and I'm like, oh no, 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 like I don't want anything to happen to Luffy. And there was like the moment when but it's like, I was gonna say in the moment like when Zoro is stabbed, and you know, there's, you know, but that's for the love of the character. The Zoro thing is for the love of the character when he gets stabbed. That, you know, I don't want anything to happen to him because I like him as a character. But specifically, let me get back to Luffy, let me not go too far off the rails. Specifically for Luffy, when he's surrounded by this water, and you know, he doesn't have as much strength, and there's this real there's this high stakes moment where I'm like, we all know, everyone who reads this, who's bought in, knows that because he ate the devil fruit, that water is his enemy. Like, water is no good for Luffy. And so it's like, because we know this, it's like we know that this setting, at least I knew at this setting, that being surrounded by water and this real danger, that if he gets inside of the water, like he's gonna sink and die, like that adds something to it. And it adds, you know, it adds a layer of tension that wasn't there before. But it's partly because like this is how Oda has constructed the world, and there's this buy-in. And I don't know, I find that really fascinating, and I find that really thought-provoking. And so, you know, I'm wondering, like, I'm in, you know, basically at chapter 70. I've just finished 68, and I have this much buy-in now, and y'all are telling me that the world just gets bigger and more intense and more beautiful, and the story gets more intense. And so I'm wondering, you know, does the buy-in, or does the fantasy just continue, and it just gets bigger, and it makes sense, and it's all connected, so that when something happens, it truly feels so high stakes that, you know, the readers really are chewing their nails, or sitting at the edge of their seat waiting for the next chapter, because there is so much love and buy-in and, you know, so much sort of world constructing that makes sense, and that is just wonderful. You know, and then something happens, and it's like truly perilous. So I'm wondering that, and I think that Oda right now is doing a really good job of the construction of the world, and making me like using what he has constructed to place his characters in situations in which I am like, oh no. My goodness, we all know what water means to devil fruit eaters, and so what is happening? And so, you know, and I mean, it takes talent to have such, you know, to be able to create something in which readers readers have such buy-in to the world and to the characters. And so I don't know. This was just sort of rambly thoughts and theories at the very end of it all. But yeah, that's it. So tell me, you know, share your thoughts. What are some things that stood out to you during this arc? I would love to know. As always, I'm just ever so grateful for y'all to be here. I'm just thrilled, humbled, shocked, all of the things that y'all are here and watching me read One Piece and report back on it. It's just been a delight and an absolute surprise on my end. So thank you so much. And anyways, I just want to thank you all for being here, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!